Ibrahim Traoré, from a quiet boy to the voice of a revolution. Have you ever heard the name Ibrahim Traoré? He's not a billionaire. Nor is he a veteran politician molded by elite Western schools. He is simply a soldier, a young captain who rose from the dust and poverty of Burkina Faso, a place where hunger, injustice, and gunfire once echoed as part of daily life. And yet, from the very depths of obscurity, he stood up. Not to be a king, but to be a protector of his people. In a world where leaders are often bought by power and profit, he chose to speak the truth. In an era where men trade their souls for a seat at the table of influence, he refused to become a puppet for any global power. He chose to stand on the front lines of danger, armed with only one thing, an unshakable belief in freedom, dignity, and the future of the African people. This is not just a political story. It is a call to awaken those who kneel in silence. A light for those still stumbling in the dark under oppression. Subscribe now to Ibrahim Traoré Biography, because if you've ever felt the world was unfair, you need to hear this story. Because if you've ever longed to be free, you need to know his name. And if there's still a flame of hope in you, hold on to it, with Ibrahim Traoré. Humble roots of a great soul. Ibrahim Traoré wasn't born in a major hospital under the city lights. His first cry came on an ordinary morning in 1988. In Kara, a small village nestled in Malhoun province, Burkina Faso, a place barely remembered on the world map. He grew up among dust, hunger, and his mother's lullabies woven with quiet endurance. There was no television. No dreams of Europe, no books on leadership. The only thing that nourished him each day was the hopeful gaze of the villagers, people weary from war and forgotten by the world. People often believe that to lead, you must be born into power, educated in the West, and speak French with perfect fluency. But Ibrahim Traoré proved something else. You don't need a privileged birth to carry a powerful vision. While other children learn to survive through silence, he learned by listening and observing. While grown-ups bowed in resignation, he looked up and remembered. His life wasn't paved with red carpets, but with the red dust of the Sahel. And it was precisely in that harsh, raw, unforgiving land that the spirit of a man was forged, a man destined to carry the weight of history. So if you've ever felt small because of your humble beginnings, remember that from such a quiet, forgotten corner of the world, someone like Ibrahim stood up. The quiet student and the early questions that shaped his life. After completing primary school in the rural town of Bondakai, Ibrahim was sent to Bobo-Dioulasso, the second largest city in Burkina Faso, to continue his secondary education. It was a turning point. From windswept fields to the chaos of city streets, where the noise of life often drowned out the whispers of the soul. Yet in the middle of all that hustle, Ibrahim kept a quiet world of his own, calm, reflective, and still. His classmates remembered him as someone reserved. He didn't brag, he didn't chase trends, but he was undeniably sharp. And his teachers admitted, he wasn't brilliant because he talked a lot, he was brilliant because he thought differently. Ibrahim didn't just study books, he began to study life. Why were the people around him so poor? Why did children study under thatched roofs while the wealthy lived behind tall walls guarded by soldiers? Why did the government claim to serve the people while the people grew hungrier every day? And most importantly, who would rise to change that? He never said these questions out loud, but they smoldered within him like a tiny spark, waiting for the right moment to ignite. In a society growing numb to submission, that quiet boy learned to face the truth, not to complain, but to prepare, because Ibrahim Traoré wasn't waiting for someone to rescue him. He was quietly preparing to become the one who would rescue others. University years, from intellect to idealism. In 2006, Ibrahim Traoré was admitted to the University of Ouagadougou, majoring in geology, a field that might seem, at first glance, to be just about studying rocks and soil, but for him, it was much more than that. It was a way to understand the pain of a land being exploited, where precious resources were drained by foreign hands, while the poor remained trapped in darkness. In the lecture halls, Ibrahim didn't just study the formation of the earth. He began to see the fractures within his own society. And he could not look away. He joined to student organizations that seemed, on the surface, to be opposites. The Islamic Student Association, representing the deep spiritual faith that anchored him. The Marxist National Student Association, ANEB, representing his fiery resistance to injustice. Most would say, you can't be both a man of faith and a revolutionary. But Ibrahim was not like most. He believed faith taught him to love humanity. And idealism taught him to never look away when humanity was being trampled. In protests and passionate debates, Ibrahim wasn't the loudest voice shouting slogans. But he was the one who stood up when friends were bullied, when students were treated unfairly. He didn't need a flag or a banner, only the truth. And from those narrow corridors of the university, a powerful vision began to take shape. Not to become a politician, but to become a defender of dignity for those who had no voice, graduating with honors, entering life with a quiet flame. Ibrahim Traoré left university with no grand celebration. No parties, no selfies, no applause. He simply graduated, quietly, with honors, a testament to his intelligence and the unwavering resolve of a young man who never gave up. But what set him apart was not the diploma itself, it was the choice he made afterward. He didn't use it as a ticket to escape his country. While many of his peers chased office jobs and dreamed of contracts with international firms, Ibrahim chose a different path. He wasn't looking for a high salary. He had no plans to apply for scholarships abroad. Because deep inside him, a path had already formed, not paved with dollars, but with duty. I didn't study to earn more money. I studied to understand how my country was wounded and how to heal it. That wasn't a slogan, it was a quiet vow. He left university carrying not just geological knowledge, but a heart that ached at the sight of injustice, and a will that refused to compromise with what was wrong. To the world, Ibrahim was just a recent graduate, but to history, he was a young man quietly walking toward his destiny, with a fire in his heart that never once dimmed. Where a revolution without gunfire began, Ibrahim Traoré wasn't born to be a symbol. He was just a young man who once sat quietly in the corner of a classroom, ate humble street meals, and watched the world through worn-out books and the sorrowful eyes of his mother. No one, not even he himself, knew that one day he would lead an entire nation. But destiny doesn't choose the loudest. Destiny chooses those deep enough to feel pain, strong enough not to bow, and quiet enough to hear the voice within. From the rural village of Kara, from a dusty schoolyard in Bobo-Dioulasso, from the red soil campus of the University of Ouagadougou, a revolution was quietly born. No gunshots, no trumpets, only a heart that refused to surrender, and eyes that never turned away from the truth. I don't want to rule. I just can't keep watching my people starve while outsiders loot our land. Ibrahim's life is proof that a revolution doesn't have to begin with blood. It can begin with someone who quietly observes, deeply loves their country, and dares to rise when everyone else remains seated. If you've ever felt too small to make a difference, remember Ibrahim Traoré. And if you want to keep following his remarkable journey, subscribe now to Ibrahim Traoré Biography, because this story is just beginning. We often think of heroes as warriors emerging from battlefields, wielding swords, crowned by glory. But the truth is, heroes are born in silence. In poor classrooms, in sweltering dormitories, on dusty roads of forgotten African villages, Ibrahim Traoré wore no crown. He had no throne, no media to glorify his name. He had only one thing, an unshakable belief that justice must never be compromised. He didn't rise to become president out of ambition. He rose because no one else would. And when no one dared speak, he became the voice. Ibrahim's story reminds us, you don't need to be born in a palace to change a nation. You only need a heart that refuses to bow. And if you are living in a society full of injustice, where leaders forget the people, where you are told you're too small, too weak, too insignificant, remember this. It is often the smallest among us, those who dare to believe in something bigger, who end up rewriting destiny. Subscribe now to Ibrahim Traoré Biography, because this is more than a story. This is where we reignite hope, stand for the truth, and affirm one thing together: freedom is not granted. Freedom is reclaimed by those who dare.